May the words of our mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. Doubting Thomas. Doubting Thomas. That's kind of a pejorative nickname, isn't it? Doubting Thomas. But you know, I really think that Thomas is the tough-minded one of all those apostles. Strong and brave. The 10 of them, I don't really think they had time yet to select Matthias, are huddled together in an upper room with the door locked. They're afraid of the Jews. They're afraid of the Romans. Are they going to come and take them? Or are they going to put them all on and crucify them, put them all on the cross and crucify them? Or should we be worried about the temple Jews coming and getting them? But one of them is brave enough to go out. Now, they've been together 3 days or so they're probably hungry, and they don't have any pizzas in the freezer to warm up, so somebody's got to go and look for food. And plus, it might be interesting to hear what kind of gossip is going on around them. And so, brave Thomas steps out into the streets, looking for food perhaps, listening for gossip perhaps, just being brave enough to be out there and not worrying about being picked up. And he's heard all kinds of things about what people are saying. It was a joke. He really wasn't dead. They just pretended. Somebody came and stole his body and then said he had been resurrected. You know, who thought that they had actually seen him? You know, that's just not true. So he came back to the 12 or to the 10 with all kinds of stories and gossip that he had heard on the streets. So it's not surprising that he's going, oh, and you saw him too. Prove it to me. I won't believe it until I see it for myself. And Jesus comes to him a week later, and he says, my Lord and my God. He is believing. The opposite of belief is not certainty. The opposite of belief is not certainty. The opposite of certainty is fear. Opposite of certainty is fear. If you are absolutely certain you are right, of course you are afraid that you might be wrong. The opposite of faith is doubt. Doubt. All of us need to be thinking about what we believe and wondering about what does it mean, making it whole inside of us. One of the things I used to say about education for ministry groups is I wish we had people who disagreed with us, some really hard-line conservative thinkers, because then we would have to think about our beliefs and what we believe. There is an apocryphal story that went around about 20 years ago or so, and the story was that an Episcopal church, the priest stood up and asked people to stand for the Nicene Creed, and then told them, when you get to something you don't believe, sit down. And at the end of the Nicene Creed, there was one person standing. And I think all of us feel that way about something in the Nicene Creed. We need to start with what is it that we believe and then build on it. Personally, as I've said before, I believe God created the world, and I believe that Jesus was resurrected. The rest of it is built for me on that. But to me, one of the most important pieces of this story is what Jesus says to Thomas, which is, blessed are those who have not seen and yet come to believe. That's us. We are those who have not seen but have come to believe. And that strength is built on looking at our doubts, figuring out how we believe and what we believe. Let's fast forward a couple of months, and we meet Peter. Peter, who we know is the bumbling whatever, who was always saying the wrong thing and doing the wrong thing, but now he's out in the streets preaching and teaching. We know it's at least 2 months later because Pentecost is 50 days after the resurrection and 50 days after the Passover. Penta means 50. And so it's at least 2 months. He's been out on the street making the Jews in the temple leadership a little greener on the ears because they're angry at him. And actually, prior to the piece that we had read to us, the temple police had captured all the disciples, the apostles, put them in jail. And then the angel of the God came and opened all the doors, and they got out. And what did they do? They went back out preaching and teaching. And what did the temple police do? They brought him back in, brought them all back in. And so the high priest says to them, "What are you doing? We told you to stop doing that. You are trying to make us look like we killed this man." And Peter stands up and says, "We must obey God rather than human authority." We must obey God rather than human authority. Now, one thing that's interesting in this piece of Acts of the Apostle is that Luke, or that John, brings says that the Jews have put Jesus on the cross. When we know in the Passion that the Jews have said, the leadership of the temple have said, "We cannot kill him because it is against our religion. You have to kill him. You have to say he's an insurrectionist. You have to say he's making the crowds come up against Rome, and you have to get rid of him. We can't do it." And yet, in this piece, Luke says that the Jews have put him on the cross. And it's kind of an interesting thing. The professor who taught Acts at the School for Deacons allowed us how, if you are a small country, a small group of people who are trying to get the word out, who would you want for your biggest enemy? Would you want a small group of Jewish leaders, or would you want the whole empire of Rome all over you? So you're going to move to the Jews as being the ones who killed Jesus, which is a very sad thing because it has meant thousands, hundreds of years, centuries of the Jews being persecuted because they killed Jesus. Now, part of it was also that they were money changers, and nobody likes money changers. And part of it was because during the plagues, they washed their hands, and so they didn't get it as bad. And people would say, well, they must have started it because they didn't get it as bad as the rest of us did. But Jews have been able, like any other minority, they've been able to point their fingers at them and say, ha-ha, it's you who are the evil. And because of that, they have been persecuted for centuries. But for me, the real piece in this part of Acts is what Peter says. We must obey God rather than human authority. We must obey God rather than human authority. And so when you hear preaching that you say, that's political, it is really that we must obey God rather than human authority. We must love our neighbor. We must, as Jesus said to Peter, feed the sheep, tend the sheep. Feed my sheep, tend my sheep. We must visit people in prisons. We must feed the hungry. We must love everyone, loving our neighbor. We are not a group that says, okay, we love our kids and we love our family, But if we have enough love in us, maybe we could reach out to our next door neighbor. No. What Jesus said is love. Love your neighbor, love everyone. Think about their needs and help them. And so, when you start to think, oh, this is very political, remember what Peter said. We must obey God rather than any human authority. Amen.